Hey guys, Keith from Kegland, and today we're talking about these new Nukatap Minis and a bunch of accessories that have come out with these. So I'm going to show you a few different configurations in which you can install these. Up until now, really the only, the main tap that we've sold is the Nukatap SS and the Nukatap FC. So these full-size taps. Now typically a full-size tap like this, it's heavier, it's more bulky, and it's great for pouring beers really fast. So if you've got a pub or a bar where you're pumping through 50-litre kegs and you've got a queue of people 10 deep, you want to be able to get those pints out, one every say 15 seconds. And that's the reason why we use this large 10mm orifice on the spout. So fantastic for high turnover bars or where you're pouring lots of beer, great. Absolutely fantastic tap. Now, we've done a lot of work to reduce the first pour foam, on these taps by making it very laminar flow, by, the Nukatap shuttle we redesigned, as you know in a previous video, went through a lot of detail about that. But also we reduced the thermal mass of the tap as well. But we've got to these limitations now where if people want to improve this further for smaller keg systems where you don't need to pour beers really fast, I think this Nukatap Mini is an excellent option. So people wanting like a small, portable keg system or a temporary system, if you're looking to just take samples out of a fermenter, or you're simply taking away like a growler and you've got a little small growler dispenser and you don't want to waste a whole lot of beer in foam because you've only got a few litres of beer to take with you in the first place. The worst thing is if you've got like half a glass of foam which you have to tip out and get that wastage. So by minimizing the tap body size, it minimizes a lot of that first pour foam issue even further. And also for a system which you want, which is really compact, I think this is an ideal tap. Literally, this is small enough to put in your top pocket and take it out at a party when you want to use it. So very handy tap. Let's get stuck into it. I'll show you how this tap is used and the benefits of using this bad boy. The first accessory I'm going to show you is this little assembly here. So this is the 8mm duo tight shank assembly. So this will enable you to attach this type of tap either to a normal push-in 8mm duo type ball lock disconnect, or you can also use, which is my favorite, the flow control model. So in this instance, this is where you'd want to attach the tap directly to the post of a keg, and that's a really great way to quickly just take a sample out. This is a great one to take to a party or something like that. And if you want to attach this assembly, what you do is you get this part here. So this is basically just got a radial O-ring, so no need to screw this in ridiculously tight. Once you push it in, it's basically going to seal straight away. Then you've got this part and this part here. And you can just screw this onto the back of the tap, onto this 1/2-inch thread. So you basically do up this, coupling ring like that, and yeah, you basically just attach that like so. And what I can do is then push this into the ball lock disconnect. So because this is 8mm, I can push that in like so into an 8mm ball lock disconnect. Now, the only issue with this setup here, as you can see on this one, I've basically got the tap which can rotate. So that could be a positive or a negative. It can be a bit of a hassle sometimes if this is rotating around too much and you're operating it with one hand. One thing I'll also say is there's no flow resistance. So if you've got a keg, you'll really have to put the pressure very low in order to be able to pour, with the tap in this configuration. And if the keg sits at a low pressure for a long time, then you're going to end up, the beer will go flat after some time. So like really, in my opinion, the way that I would really use this is with the flow control ball lock disconnect. The flow control lock ball lock disconnect is also fantastic because of this little tang on top. So you can see where I've got this piece here. This can actually undo and I can rotate this in any direction. So I've got freedom of movement of the tap. Depending on which way your post is sitting, you can basically attach it and rotate this in any direction. So that's kind of handy. But once you put this in a specific position and screw up this and the teeth on the tap body engage with this shank assembly, you'll notice that I can then hold this tap in a fixed position in relation to the ball lock disconnect because of that tang engagement. So once again, with any duo type fitting, especially all our new ones, we're putting in this little depth gauge. So look at the depth gauge, how far you have to push it in, and then basically push this into that correct depth like so. So what I do is I push it in like this, So that's all the way in right up to the bump stop at the back there. And now I can basically just use this as normal. And obviously, because this is a flow control ball lock disconnect, I can add some flow resistance simply by twisting that down like that and then getting the required flow speed through the tap to get me a good pour. So this is a fantastic setup, which I highly recommend to anyone with a keg system and corny kegs. Some of you guys might be asking, well, I want to get the Nukatap Mini and mount it to my Keyser or mount it to my, wrapped fermentation chamber or put it on a wall of some sort or maybe put it on an Esky. Well, typically with these types of large taps, we've always sold long shanks for that application. So these are the types of shanks that go on the back of a tap like this, and then somebody would then, get this really long shank and they'll drill a large hole through the door of their, fridge or Keyser or something like that. And the annoying thing about these long shanks is firstly, they're 5/8 thread, which is a very uncommon thread type. Also, they're a huge thermal mass and a large portion of this shank, as you can imagine, if I have a, cool room wall, for instance, and this is going through, I've got a large amount of shank, which is unrefrigerated, sitting in the middle of the wall. And that can cause you quite a lot of first pour foam because there's a lot of beer, sitting in here, just going sour, essentially in the shank. Now, luckily with our shanks, we drill a relatively small bore compared to a lot of our competitors. If you see a really cheap shank, it's even worse because some of the cheap shanks, they have a huge bore, so big enough to almost put your finger inside. And then that means this entire shank body has, beer filled up in here, and you can end up with sometimes even more than half a glass or a whole glass of foam on that first pour. And nobody really wants to have unrefrigerated beer in their draft system. It's just a big no-no. So when we made the Nukatap Mini, we thought, look, it's a great time for us to basically rethink the whole shank design and make something a lot smarter than this, quite stupid shank 5/8 assembly, which the whole industry has just found a standard point on. The other thing I really hate about these 5/8 shanks is because they're really just got only the one 5/8 shank going through your Keyser or fridge door. You're basically relying on the pressure of this big nut on the back pushing up against the foam inside your door to stop the tap itself rotating. Now, if you guys have ever used, a big nut like that and tightened it up, you'll notice that the foam inside the door or the Esky or cooler box or whatever you're using will eventually crush flat, and then you have to gradually tighten the nut up again, and then maybe another few weeks later you have to tighten up more, and you end up like just squashing that foam more and more, reducing your insulation, causing another problem as well. So really they're kind of stupid, and it's something we didn't want to repeat this type of shank assembly, with the Nukataps. We didn't design this. This was the industry standard, I'll say. So please don't blame us for making 5/8 shanks. That's just how the industry was before we came into the scene. So one of the awesome things about this shank assembly is you don't need different sizes. Like if you're familiar with the 5/8 shank, you have to buy the appropriate length to suit the job that you're doing. So you might need a long one or a medium one or a short one or whatever, but this is kind of like a one size fits all type of shank assembly, and I'll show you how it works. We've got a couple different models. This is the one which takes the 1/4 inch ever barrier line. So this piece here will vary depending on if you're getting the 1/4 inch or that's 6.35 millimeter, or the 5/8, which is obviously 8 millimeter beer line. For these types of systems, if you've got the kegs very close to the tap, I'd recommend using the smaller beer line so you can use a short beer line and still get the appropriate level of flow resistance. Now, if you go onto our website, you can also download this type of hole drilling guide. Now, this is just an A4 sheet of paper, so just print it on a standard A4 and make sure not to use any scaling or anything like that. That way these will print to the right size. So let's say if I wanted to get this shank and fit it to, let's say, a door, like something made out of solid wood or something like that, for instance, then what I do is get this drilling guide, stick it onto the wood like this. Now, the installation's slightly different if you're using these screws or not. So typically I would use these M4 screws, threaded screws, if I was going to put it through like a foam wall or a cooler or a fridge door or something like that. But because I'm going into a solid bit of wood, I actually prefer to use just these wood screws, and that way makes the installation even easier again. So what I do is just put a bit of tape there like that, and another bit of tape just to hold this steadily in place. Now, you have to drill a hole firstly for the beer line in the middle, like that. So I'm just going to get this drill bit here, anywhere between like a, 8 millimeter or something like that should do the job. Just enough so essentially what I can do is get my beer line and make sure that fits through this hole like this. So I go like that, take off this hole drilling guide. Now, I don't really need these other, you can pre-drill the holes if you wanted to. Look, if I was going to be very fastidious and really cared about my woodwork, you know, I would basically make sure to pre-drill these holes with a smaller drill bit. But look, you know, for the video, I don't think this type of, you know, plywood is going to, you know, splinter too much. So I'm just going to have a crack at it. Then what you would do is essentially, you know, get your screw here. Now you want to use a countersunk screw because these ones will basically sit flat up against this assembly here. So see that how that's countersunk? And I kind of need that to be countersunk like that. So this cover plate will go over the top without any obstruction. So basically just put that on here like this. And then screw that down with the Phillips head screwdriver. If you make the hole a bit bigger in the middle, it's going to give you a little bit more tolerance and clearance. And sometimes, to be honest with you, if the hole's a little bit bigger, it's not a bad thing because then I'm going to have you know, basically a bit more air going around the back of the beer line and cooling the beer line from the internals of the fridge. The other thing I should say is a significantly less amount of beer sitting in the beer line. So if you look at the orifice of, let's say, this 1/4 inch line, I've literally got only a few mils of beer for every meter of beer line. So hardly any beer line is actually going to be sitting unrefrigerated in the thickness of the wall itself. Even if I've got quite a thick wall, it's a lot less than obviously this big shank. You can see the orifice difference. So here I might have, you know, maybe even 50 or 100 mils for a long shank. And then this one here, I might only have, you know, something like about 5 or 10 milliliters of beer sitting in the wall itself unrefrigerated. So substantially better in that respect. Look, I can't be bothered putting in the other 2 screws. It's basically the same process. And once you're done there, you put on this cover plate like that. And then what you do is you would get this piece here and then push the beer line through that hole from the back. I must say, this is pretty awkward to do with the camera in the way, but yeah, you push that in from the back, push that onto the back of the adapter. This pushes into the hole like so, and then you can get the tap, and then once again, do up that shank. Now, another thing I'm going to show you as well is the self-closing spring. This is a great attachment. Let me just grab that for you. If you decide to use this little spring, which I highly recommend, this is great for portable systems in particular, because if you're out in the park and a frisbee hits the tap handle, you don't want your, you know, your entire lot of beer to just go all over the grass. So what you can do is just get this spring, just drop that inside the tap bore like so, and then go onto this bit like that. So just put it in before you attach that, then push this back into the coupling, do this up. And once again, the teeth which you have in the back of the tap body will interlock essentially with that shank assembly. So if I needed to change the angle, for instance, I can undo this nut. So it won't rotate. See, I've got none of that rotation issue because I've got a fixed you know, screw or 3 screws. You know, it's very hard to have this rotate with the same issue that I've got with a 5/8 shank. Then I can also undo that nut if I needed to put it in that orientation. For instance, I simply rotate it, do the nut back up, and it will be held solidly in that location. So very, very easy installation, very little beer sitting in the wall, and really an optimal result, and no need for multiple different shank types for different wall thicknesses. So another little benefit there. So if you wanted to use these M4 screws, you'll look closely at them and you'll notice that they've got these little sections here so you can cut the M4 screw down to the right size. Now, of course, you could just go out and find, you know, an M4 screw at any hardware store because they're pretty easy to come across. But yeah, if you needed to change the length of this screw, depending on the thickness of what you're going through, you just get the screw like this and you chop it down in these sections here down to the right length. So I've just got the trusty Leatherman here. Because it's an M4 diameter, it's not that much force required to chop a screw like this, I guess. So look, if you had an angle grinder, I'd probably do that. It would probably do a slightly neater job, but look, I've just got my pliers on me, so I'm just gonna undo that, do that, and then I've got this other half of it. So basically, you chop the screw down to the right length, depending on what you're gonna go through, and then you attach one side like this and the other side like this, and screw the 2 parts together like so. So that'll then attach and pull these 2 parts together. So I've got one of these at the front and one of these at the back. And as you can see, it's a nice, neat finish. I don't have like a big long shank sticking out into the cooler or anything like that. Another little handy part, look, if you needed this to, go at a right angle, you may want to think about putting an elbow or something like that on the inside here. But yeah, I'll let you think about that. Once you've finished that, obviously get this little decorative cover plate like that, push it over the front like this. And as you can see, I've basically got that all together. Put the tap on the front like this, and I've made a pretty cool portable keg system, in a cooler. So just using the Core 360 regulator and soda stream, I can put a keg in here, chuck some ice on top, and away I go to a barbecue, and that's a pretty good, portable setup that I can take with me. Now I'm going to show you another little accessory which I whipped up in the workshop the other day, and it worked well enough that I think that we're going to put these on the website as well, so let us know in the comments. I call this one the clamp-on tap adapter. So basically what we've got is some folded stainless steel, and then this sliding piece here which slides basically back and forth using these sort of wing nut screws here, so you can adjust and clamp it onto pretty much any type of system. So I've got this Esky. This was just purchased down at the hardware store as a bit of a sample. As you can see, this one has the handy little wheelie thingy, like a suitcase, I guess. And if you open it up, I've got basically like a standard 9.5 litre corny keg, and I've got also one of these PCO 38 kegs with the tapping head on top. So what you can do, for instance, is if you don't want to have to drill through the Esky and make holes through the Esky wall or the cooler wall, what you can do is just use something like this. So just basically go on top of the fridge. Oh, I have to get the beer line first. So I've got the, once again, the 1/4 inch beer line because it's quite close to where the tap is. That way I can use a fairly short beer line like this. Attach the beer line onto the back of the Duo-Tight shank. Then put this on top of the edge of the Esky like this, and just do up these wing nuts on top, like so, on both sides, like that. Now, as you can see, that is pretty firmly in place, depending on how tightly you do the wing nuts up like that. It's not going to move anywhere. Now, it does have the minor constraint that now I've got the beer line passing through the lid jamb. So yeah, just clip it into this beer line tidy, which is stuck on the top, and then I can hook this up onto the keg in there. So basically, I'm just going to go straight onto the keg like that. Now, if I shut the door, if I shut the lid, you can see it kind of still is slightly ajar. So that's one of the problems. It's not going to seal really tight, but I guess once I'm finished for the day, I can just undo it, drop it inside the Esky itself, and that way I don't have to drill through anything. Another cool accessory I just made up, and I might sort of show you as well, is I just actually got one of these PET bottles. This is a soda water bottle, and I'm actually using this as the dispense gas. So instead of having to go with my soda stream bottle all the time, sometimes it's nice to be able to fill up just one of these. Now, I pressure tested this bottle to 120 psi and hydro tested it first with water, so I know that it actually holds quite a lot of pressure. I've then basically pumped this up to about 5 bar now, or about sort of 60 odd psi, 65, somewhere around about there. And then what I can do is chuck this in here like this and actually use this as the dispense gas. So basically I'm using this kind of like a, an alternative to a CO2 cylinder. Got the ball lock disconnect and carbonation cap, and then it's dropping the pressure on the inline regulator here. So this is the really inexpensive one that we sell as a secondary regulator. Set the pressure to about 10 psi or something like that. Drop it in the Esky, and as you can see, I can just drop it in like that, clip it onto the ball lock post like so, and then that will dispense the beer out of here in this portable setup. How awesome is that? Don't even need a gas cylinder, and I can refill those off my large CO2 cylinder at home. Now, the moment of truth, let's give this tap a go. Beautiful. Now I've got the keg set at about 12 psi. I'm using sort of somewhere around about just under a meter of beer line, and I'm getting a nice controllable flow speed there. I might even drop this up and down like that to try to work the head up. As you can see, I'm hardly getting any wastage at all, which is perfect. So even on that first pour, because the thermal mass of the tap is less, and I've got that laminar flow design, it pours a beautiful beer straight off the bat. It comes out at a speed obviously slower than a standard beer tap, as said before, because of the 6.5mm orifice, but that is perfect for a picnic or where you don't need to be pumping out beers so quickly. It also might make it easier for those people who aren't familiar with using beer taps to pour beers if it isn't coming out quickly. The other thing you might find this handy is also for cocktails where you've only got a small glass, so you might be only pouring, let's say, 150 mils of espresso martini into a martini glass. A traditional beer tap would be hard to do that with, but this optimized beer tap for slower flow rates really is a great option for that application. So let's say you want to put a tap onto a fridge, but you don't want to drill a hole through the door, then this clamp-on tap assembly is perfect for that application as well. I've got actually this magnet, you could obviously use just any old fridge magnet, but I'm just going to put that over the top just to prevent any scratches from the stainless steel. And I'm going to drop this over the top of the door, do up these wing nuts at the top here, like so. And this is great, maybe if you're going away for a weekend or you're going to a friend's house, they don't necessarily want you to drill holes through their fridge door. And then because I'm using the small 1/4-inch beer line, it actually is enough to be able to go through the door jamb like that, and you can still shut the fridge door on a lot of different fridges. I'm gonna clip this onto that ball lock disconnect inside the fridge like so. I've still got that PET, gas arrangement there. On the bottle, and I'm just going to shut the door and get the beer line out of the way like so. And as you can see, the door shuts, the fridge seal is still sealing up around the edges, and I can literally just pour a beer like that, and I've made a really convenient portable little keg system. So that is a fantastic way to be able to, make an awesome little keg system, in literally a few moments without any drilling or anything like that, just with this easy clamp-on adapter. So there we go. How easy is that? Well, that is it, guys. Hope you enjoy using the Nukatap Mini. I think it's an awesome accessory to anyone with a keg system. If you want to hear about any of the other cool new stuff that's coming out, definitely bottom right-hand corner, hit subscribe now. Also join our Facebook Homebrew community group. Thousands of members sharing tips and tricks on how to use the gear. Another thing is, if you guys want us to make any new gear, put it in the comments as well. We read the comments, listen to them, and a lot of new products are there and come into existence because our customers request them. We have an active design team making products and listening to your requests, so please get involved in the conversation down below in the comments. Give us a thumbs up too, please. It would really help us. It doesn't cost you anything and only takes 2 seconds. All right, see you guys next time. Bye.